Welcome back. The issue of racial inequality has become a very prominent one, especially with the emergence of Black Lives Matter groups all across the world. The argument has been brought forward in St. Lucia that there is not an issue with racism. Black Lives Matter St. Lucia advocates say in St. Lucia, coming from a history of slavery, a bit of racism, colorism, and classism is evident.
Ever since St. Lucia joined the Black Lives Matter movement, there has been much dispute that St. Lucia does not have an issue of racism. Many arguments have been made that the issue on island is one of classism and capitalism. Interim chair of Black Lives Matter St. Lucia, Peter Ras Iper Isaac, says given the island's history, racism, colorism, and classism have been faced.
We have suffered a certain level of prejudice in our society as well, coming out from slavery and colonialism. Remember, even within our system, our banking system and other systems, you had to have a certain kind of color of skin for you to get a job. So all these things are still there in our society, and we must never lose the fact that these things exist. They existed and they exist today. And if you notice, people who earns and who continue earning all the lands are not people of color most of the time.
Laura Jomo-Pierre indicated that the issue in St. Lucia is much deeper than just black and white and should be looked at on a level of social consciousness.
If you are white and you have a social conscience, you are my brother. You are part of the struggle for social justice. But if you white and your modus operandi is colonial in style and fashion, you're not on my side.
You're my enemy.
Bottom line.
He echoed the sentiments of Isaac, indicating that when he was growing up, only people of a certain complexion were allowed into certain fields of work. The Black Lives Matter movement St. Lucia has indicated that one of their mandates is to continue the fight for black people who are disenfranchised or being discriminated at this stage in the fight for social justice and equality. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Janine Gonza.
The leader of the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party, Philip J. Pierre, has declared that his party plans to turn the observation of Emancipation Day in St. Lucia from an insignificant holiday into a major event in the country's national calendar. In an Emancipation Day message posted on the party's Facebook page on Saturday, the 1st of August, Pierre added that a Labour Party government will also ensure that the history of the country is permanently taught in all its schools as part of the effort to successfully honor the story of our enslaved ancestors. Citing the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of the unfinished struggle against racism and as a reminder of the resistance by the slaves in the Caribbean, which partly contributed to the abolition of slavery in the British West Indies in 1838, he called upon St. Lucians to emulate the example of their ancestors so that total liberation can be achieved.
Lives Matter movement, let us understand that it's incumbent upon us to continue to battle for total liberation. Liberation from attitudes that belittle our heritage, our patrimony, that divide us as a nation, that separate us as a region, and consequently weaken us internationally. We in St. Lucia must be bold enough, like our ancestors, to free ourselves from bondage of whatever shape, from the chains of greed, from the shackles of corruption, from the yoke of intolerance, from the manacles of political victimization, from the burdens of mismanagement, and from the fetters of neocolonial practices and policies. We must be brave enough to overthrow oppression, whatever its form, and courageous enough to always stand up for what is right.
That was SLP political leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pierre. Community members are being called on to take the pledge and play a part in reducing vector-borne illnesses by keeping their surroundings clean. Fernell Neptune has more.
In light of the upcoming Vector Awareness Week observed from August 3rd to the 9th, the Environmental Health Division of the Ministry of Health has embarked on educating St. Lucians on taking proactive measures in their communities to reduce the risk of vector-borne illnesses. Environmental Health Officer for Vector Control, Charlotte Charles, spoke on the need to observe this week.
So every year we tend to see some issues in terms of vector control diseases that actually come up. So the entire aim of the week is to promote some level of awareness of vectors, the diseases that these vectors can spread, and what it is that we can do as a community and the country to reduce the number or the cases of vector-borne diseases that we see on island.
Charles also called for the participation and empowerment of community members in protecting the health of the community.
We need to take personal responsibility for our surroundings. We need to have that level of responsibility. We want to encourage persons to just take a minute or two, walk around your home, look for the possible breeding grounds of mosquitoes that you have. Look at the standing water. Mosquitoes do not need much water for them to breed. And in recent times, it has been raining quite heavily, and all these discarded containers, the garbage that we have, is collecting water, and they become potential and active mosquito breeding sites. So we get a lot of calls and complaints about mosquitoes, especially in recent times. So this is the thing that we want persons to bear in mind. You can make a difference in your own home and in your community.
Resident of Pavey, Jeremiah Joseph, applauded the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority and the Environmental Health Division for assisting in an initiative in the fight against rodents and mosquitoes in his community.
We didn't want people to just come and just clean up. We wanted people to know exactly the proper way, because it's one thing of having a cleanup campaign, but it's the continuation. You know, you want people to take more responsibility of the community. So the Environmental Health Department decided, okay, what they could do, they could help us by, we could stay some meetings with the community, explaining to them how important it is to keep your community clean, the proper way of disposing of garbage, because you know, with marriage there's a lot of rodents, you know, of rats and mosquitoes, you know, all those vector-borne diseases that are in and could have impact on the health of the community.
Vector Awareness Week is being held under the theme, My Actions, My Community, My Health. Reporting from the Communications Unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, I am Fernal Neptune.
The Replast OECS pilot plastic recycling project has to date facilitated the export of 2 shipments of plastics for recycling. At the height of the COVID-19 crisis, the project successfully dispatched its first shipment on the 14th of May 2020 in the form of a 40-foot container which included 12,000 pounds of plastic bottles, bottle caps, and PET preforms.
Replast OECS is a pilot plastic recycling project, which objective is to support the development and implementation of an OECS-wide plastic waste collection and recycling system. Starting with St. Lucia as a pilot country, it's a 2-year public-private initiative primarily funded by the French government and implemented by Unite Caribbean, Pan-Caribbean Sustainable Development Partner. On many aspects, this pilot project is a trailblazing initiative for St. Lucia and for the OECS. Because for the first time, plastic waste is now diverted from the landfill in St. Lucia to be transformed into a valuable recycled item in a circular economy model.
Recycling Solutions Limited from the south and BioHubs Limited from the north of the island came together on Monday 11th May 2020 to combine their collections of plastic and load a 40-foot container. 29 bales of plastic bottles, 8 bags of bottle caps, and 1 box of preforms were labeled, packaged, weighed, and transported to the seaport at Castries. The partners are happy with the support received from the Replast project.
I'm happy that that is happening now because it will help, I think, in focusing the efforts on proper collection and separation of waste that can be recycled. Because as a recycler, that's my biggest challenge, is to collect the material, because waste is so bulky. If I alone have to do the collection, it will cost so much that at the end of the day, the price that we'll get for the material would not cover the cost of collection even.
Working with Replast OECS, I think it is a good business venture, not only good for private entities like ourselves, private companies, but also obviously a cleaner and better St. Lucia and also region.
While work had already been in the pipeline for such initiatives, plastic collectors needed support from the authorities for a more sustainable program.
St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority's mandate is to effectively collect and dispose of waste in a environmentally sound manner. As time has gone by and technology has improved, recycling has increased. So what we're trying to do now is to come into the new era where waste streams of value are diverted to proper recycling plants, which is what we are here at the site of, where the plastic waste is going to be diverted. We're going to be packaged, shipped, and diverted to a recycling plant. Also, being part of government and supporting the private sector, this whole initiative is being done by a private entity. So the collection, the packaging, and the shipment is being done by a private entity supported by the Replast project.
The plastics left for its next destination, Honduras, and will now be converted into a new product and exported to other countries for sale and consumption. The Replast OECS project is primarily funded by the government of France with support from the government of St. Lucia and seeks to strengthen the relationship between the sister islands.
We say we want to strengthen the links between those two sister islands, and to strengthen the links between those two sister islands, first of all, we need to have Martinique in the OECS, and now it's done and it's working. And after that, we need to do things together. So the idea was to give the impulse in Martinique, in the OECS, and to start with St. Lucia as neighbors, removing the plastic bottles of St. Lucia, and then extending that to other OECS countries.
This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Sports and weather are coming up after the break.